She looked into my eyes for a while, unflinching, her naked body pressed against him in my kitchen. "My name is Daniel. I'm a chef. Not just any chef. People write about me in magazines, call me a master. Precision is my religion. Every slice of a knife, every pinch of salt, every second on the clock, it all has to be deliberate, controlled, perfect. My kitchen is my cathedral. Stainless steel gleams under the recessed lights, reflecting my every move like a mirror of my discipline. Rows of knives hang on a magnetic strip, their edges honed to perfection, sacred relics of my craft. Ingredients sit in meticulous order. Saffron from Spain in a tiny glass jar, truffles from Italy nestled in a wooden box, caviar from the Caspian sea chilling in a tin, each waiting for my hands to coax out their potential. The air hums with the faint scent of thyme and the tang of citrus from a bowl of lemons on the counter. This isn't just a room. It's my soul, carved out over years of sweat and sacrifice, polished to a sheen nothing can tarnish. Nothing touches it unless I allow it. Then there's Claire, my wife. She's beautiful, isn't she? Golden hair that catches the light just so, cascading over her shoulders like a cascade of honey. A smile that can charm anyone, clients at her firm, critics who dine at my table, me back when it lit up my world. She's the kind of woman people notice. Elegant, effortless. Her voice carries a lilt that once felt like music, her laugh a garnish to my days. But there was a distance in her eyes by then, a wall I couldn't climb, built brick by brick over late nights and half-truths. We had been married 12 years, long enough to know each other's rhythms, to fake it when we needed to. We were good at that, faking it. The dinners with forced conversation, the smiles for photos, the anniversaries propped up by habit. Like this one, our 12th. But beneath the surface there was something bitter, something I couldn't season away with rosemary or reduce with a low flame. Betrayals, little cuts that never healed, sharp words, missed dinners, glances I pretended not to see. I didn't talk about them much. No point. They were there, though, simmering like a pot left too long on the burner. Our house matched the facade we perfected. Big, luxurious, cold. White walls rose stark and unyielding. Marble floors echoed underfoot. Furniture sat stiff and pristine, like it belonged in a showroom, not a home where people lived. It was perfect, sure, but it wasn't alive. Not like my kitchen. I stepped inside there, and it was a different world. A walk-in fridge hummed in the corner, silent, efficient, inescapable once the door locked, its steel walls a fortress of cold. I had it custom built for me, a marvel of engineering I'd sketched out myself. I store my meats there, hung on hooks to age just right, my cheeses ripening in precise conditions, my secrets if I had any worth keeping. The stove was a 6-burner beast, gas flames that danced blue and fierce when I commanded them. Their heat a pulse I could feel in my bones. Counters stretched wide, spotless, their surfaces cool to the touch, ready for my work. It was a professional setup, better than most restaurants, a space where every tool had its place, every motion its purpose. I designed it that way. That was where I ruled, where I was safe, surrounded by the order I craved. This anniversary was special. I had planned a dinner for 2. No guests, no distractions, just us, or so I told myself. I spent the morning at the market, hand-picking everything with the care of surgeon. Fresh scallops, plump and glistening, their flesh pearlescent in the dawnlight. Asparagus, crisp and green, stalks snapping cleanly under my thumb. A bottle of Pinot Noir from Bordeaux. 1998, a good year, its label promising depth I hoped we could still find. I was making something new, my own creation. Scallops seared in brown butter, the nutty aroma filling the air. A truffle cream sauce silken and rich, a hint of lemon zest to cut through the decadence with a bright sting. Every step mattered. I started with the mise en place, everything in its place, bowls lined up like soldiers. I diced shallots, so fine you'd think they were dust, their oniony bite rising as my knife flashed. The butter melted in the pan, foamed just right, a golden pool I watched with hawk-like focus. I seared the scallops, 2 minutes aside, no more, no less, their edges crisping to a golden crust, the centers tender and yielding. Perfect. The sauce came together like a symphony, velvety, fragrant, alive with earthy notes and a whisper of citrus. I plated it up, garnished with a sprig of parsley, its green a vivid pop against the cream. It was art, my gift to her, a plea wrapped in perfection. I poured myself a glass of wine and waited. The table was set, candles flickered, casting shadows that danced on the walls, plates aligned with geometric care. She was upstairs getting ready, she had said. That was an hour before. I sipped the Pinot, let it roll over my tongue, its tannins sharp and grounding. Did she even care? All that effort, the planning, the precision, the love I poured into every dish, every moment I spent crafting a life for us. Did it mean anything to her? I stared at the empty chair across from me. The food was getting cold, the butter congealing at the edges. My mind drifted. I pictured her coming down those stairs, smiling that smile, saying something sweet. You've outdone yourself, Daniel. That was what I wanted, what I deserved after all these years. But the house was quiet, too quiet. She was taking too long, and the silence pressed in like a weight. I set the glass down. The kitchen gleamed around me, held me steady amid the growing unease. I glanced at the fridge again. That hum, it was soothing, almost reliable, a constant in a world that shifted under me. I had built this night for us, for her. So where was she? The clock ticked, each second a needle in my patience. My fingers tapped the counter, a restless rhythm. I took another sip of wine, but it tasted sharper than acidic on my palate. Something was off. I felt it like a dish that had been oversalted, a balance lost. I stood up. Maybe I'd check on her. Maybe she needed a nudge to come down and face this effort I'd made. I left the kitchen, the sanctuary, and stepped into the sterile silence of the house. The stairs creaked under my feet. My hand gripped the railing a little tighter than it should have, the wood smooth and cold against my palm. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last, the wood groaning under my weight like it shared my unease. The house stayed silent, too silent, a void that swallowed sound and left only suspicion. I told myself she was just taking her time. Claire always took her time, primping in front of her vanity, perfecting the sweep of her eyeliner, brushing her golden hair until it shone like a trophy. She'd come down soon, I reasoned, her heels clicking on the marble, her smile ready to play the part. But something gnawed at me, a splinter in my calm. A sound, faint as a whisper, drifted from somewhere. Not the bedroom, not upstairs. It came from below, my kitchen. I stopped, halfway up, my hand frozen on the railing, and listened. A clink like glass on steel. A laugh, low, muffled, but hers, unmistakable, a sound that once warmed me, but now twisted like a blade. My chest tightened, a vice squeezing my ribs. I turned back. The hallway stretched ahead, dim and cold, shadows pooling in the corners. I moved slowly, deliberately, like I was following a recipe I already knew by heart. Each step a measured beat in a dish I didn't want to finish. My mind raced, piecing it together before I even saw it. Her laugh, that clink, the hour she'd been gone. That laugh wasn't for me. It never was anymore, not since the others carved their marks into our life. I passed the dining room. Candles still burned, their flames trembling in the draft. The scallops sat untouched, their golden crust dulling as the sauce thickened in the chill. The kitchen door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out, soft and warm, but it felt wrong, invasive. My sanctuary, my rules, my cathedral where every knife, every spice bowed to my will. I gripped the handle, my palms slick with a sudden sweat, and pushed the door open. There she was, Claire, naked, my wife, naked with a man in my kitchen, the one place she should never have defiled. He sat on my counter, facing her, his back to me, oblivious, his broad shoulders hunched as he pressed against her. She looked into my eyes for a while, unflinching, her naked body pressed against him in my kitchen. Her gaze was steady, bold, a silent challenge that held me there, pinned me like a specimen under glass, before her mouth opened, but no words came out. I remained eerily calm at first, taking in the details, the disheveled clothes scattered like debris, the sweat beading on her skin, catching the light in tiny glints, the wine glasses half empty beside them, one tipped over, its red stains seeping into a crack in the steel. Her dress lay crumpled on the floor, a discarded husk, his shirt tossed near the stove, its sleeve brushing the burner I'd used an hour ago. The air smelled of sweat and her perfume, Jasmine, cloying now, not my truffles or the nutty brown butter I'd labored over. Daniel, she stammered finally, sliding off him, her movements slow, almost deliberate, as she grabbed for her dress. It's not. I raised a hand, sharp and final. Stopped her. I didn't want excuses, not the same tired lines I'd swallowed before. He turned, saw me, and that smirk faded fast, his face paling under the kitchen's harsh light. Shit, he muttered, fumbling to cover himself, his hands clumsy with panic. My mind stayed calm, eerily calm, like I was plating a dish, arranging every element with surgical precision, noting the angle of her hip, the tremor in his fingers, the way the wine pooled like blood. I remember them all then. The 5. This wasn't the first, just the boldest. The first was a colleague, some sous chef she worked with years ago, a wiry man with quick hands. A one-time mistake, she had said, tears glistening, her voice shaking just enough to sell it. I forgave her, buried it under new recipes and late nights. The second was her gym trainer, broad shoulders, all muscle, no brains, his sweat still on her when I found them. A moment of weakness, she had called it, her chin lifted defiantly. I stayed, cooked her favorite meal the next night. The third was a friend, Mark, who'd sat at our table, eaten my risotto, laughed with us over wine. That one cut deep, a betrayal seasoned with familiarity. I nearly walked out, bags half-packed, but she begged, and I relented. The fourth was a stranger, some guy she met online, late-night chats, turning into a motel room I had tracked her to. I caught her texting him, saw the lies in her eyes, the casual way she shrugged it off. I should have left then, should have sold the house, burned the kitchen down, started over. But I didn't. I rebuilt. I cooked. I pretended, layering normalcy over the rot. This was the 5th. Number 5, defiling my kitchen. My cathedral. I looked at him, his chest heaving, his hands fumbling for his shirt, sweat streaking his neck. I looked at her, her lips trembling now, her dress clutched to her chest like a flimsy shield, her hair wild from their tangle. No sadness hit me. No tears blur my vision. Just clarity. Cold, dark clarity, sharp as my best blade. This was the last. I felt it in my bones, a certainty that settled like frost. 5 was enough. Daniel, she said again, softer, stepping toward me, her bare feet silent on the tiles. Let me explain. I shook my head, slow and firm. I didn't need her words, didn't want the script she'd rehearsed so many times. I knew everything already, the pattern, the playbook, the way she'd twist this into my fault if I let her. My eyes drifted to the fridge. That hum, steady and quiet, filled the silence, a lifeline in the chaos. I took a step forward. They flinched, a synchronized twitch. Sit, I said, my voice low, even cutting through the air like a cleaver. They didn't move. I pointed to the stools by the island, my fingers steady. Sit, something in my tone, calm, too calm, made them obey. He sat first, his shirt still unbuttoned, then her, clutching that dress, her eyes darting like a cornered animal's. I leaned against the counter, the same one they'd stained, its surface still warm from their weight. My fingers brushed the handle of a knife, 8 inches razor sharp, my favorite, its balance perfect in my grip. I didn't pick it up, didn't need to, not yet. You know, I said, looking at her, I gave you everything. My voice stayed steady, a low simmer. This house, that dinner cooling out there, me. I glanced at him, his breath ragged now. And you bring this here. She opened her mouth, a protest forming, but I cut her off, my voice a whip. Don't. Just listen. I stepped closer, my shadow falling over them. They shrank back, her dress slipping slightly, his hands gripping the stool. I smiled, not warm, not cruel, just there a thin line. Let's take a walk, I said, my words deliberate, final. To the fridge. I guided them to the fridge with a calm I hadn't expected, a stillness that settled over me like a second skin. My voice stayed low, my steps measured, deliberate as a chef plating a final course under a critic's gaze. Claire clutched her dress tighter, her eyes darting between me and the man, wide with a fear she couldn't mask anymore. He, whatever his name was, followed, shirt half-buttoned, his bravado stripped away, leaving only a man who'd stumbled into a trap he didn't see coming. I didn't need the knife resting on the counter, its blade glinting under the lights. My presence was enough, a quiet, unshakable force pushing them forward, step by step, across the gleaming tiles of my kitchen. The fridge door stood open, a faint mist curling out from the cold, the air inside sharp and biting, beckoning them with an inevitability I'd planned years ago. Inside, I set my tone flat, unyielding. They hesitated, exchanged a glance, hers pleading, his panicked. I tilted my head, just enough, and something in my eyes, cold as the steel around us, broke their resistance. Claire whimpered, a small, pitiful sound, but she stepped in, her bare feet slapping the metal floor, echoing faintly. He followed, jaw tight, hands clenched into useless fists. I shut the door, the heavy thud resonating in the silence. The lock clicked, a crisp final note. Simple, final. For a moment, I stood there listening to the hum. So steady, so reliable, a heartbeat I'd engineered into this space. Then it started, banging, muffled shouts vibrating through the thick walls. "Daniel, let us out." Her voice cracked through the steel, sharp with panic, raw with desperation. His fists pounded, steady at first, then frantic, a rhythm of fear that pulsed like a failing heart. I pulled a stool over, its legs scraping the tiles, sat down, and watched the door, its surface unmarred, impenetrable. I had built that fridge myself, soundproof, airtight, efficient beyond reproach, a marvel of control I'd dreamed up late at night, sketching blueprints between shifts. They weren't getting out unless I wanted them to. I poured another glass of Pinot, the bottle still open from earlier, its deep red catching the light, swirling like liquid garnet in the crystal. The wine tasted better now, sharper, its edge matching the air, crisp, cold, unyielding against my tongue. I imagined what happened inside, my mind dissecting it with a chef's precision. I knew the stages, had studied them, almost like a recipe I'd perfected over years, a process as predictable as braising short ribs. First, their skin would have stung, the cold biting into them like 1,000 tiny needles piercing flesh, raising goosebumps they couldn't rub away. Their breaths would have thickened, fogging in front of their faces, each exhale a visible plea hanging in the frigid air. Soon, their bodies would have trembled, muscles seizing against the chill, teeth chattering in a staccato I could almost hear through the steel. Panic would have set in then, wild, desperate, clawing at the walls, fingernails scraping uselessly against smooth metal, leaving faint marks they'd never see. I heard it in their screams, the rhythm of it, chaotic yet inevitable, a crescendo of terror. Then exhaustion would have crept up, slow and heavy, dragging them down into a slump, their limbs growing leaden, their voices hoarse. Finally, stillness, a quiet so profound it mirrored my kitchen at dawn. I pictured all, step by step, precise as any dish I'd ever made. Scallops seared to a golden edge, sauce reduced to velvet, garnish placed with a steady hand. Fascinating, really, how the body broke under pressure, how it surrendered to the cold's relentless grip, a science I could chart without touching them. The banging slowed after a while, the intervals stretching, weakening. Her voice turned to sobs, broken and wet, hissed to curses, then pleas, each word fainter, swallowed by the frost. "Please, Daniel. I'm sorry." Sorry. That word again, a refrain she'd sung after every man, every lie. She'd said it after the first, tears staged for effect. After the second, a shrug in her tone. After the third, a plea I'd been fool enough to heed. After the fourth, a smirk behind the apology. I sipped my wine, savoring its bite. The glass felt cool against my lips, grounding me as their sounds faded. I wondered how long they had. Hours, maybe, before the cold took them completely, before their pulses slowed to nothing. I could have opened the door then. Could have let them stumble out, shivering, blue-lipped, begging for forgiveness or mercy, their breath visible in the warm kitchen air. But I didn't. I sat there, listening, thinking, letting the sound of their fading fight wash over me like the clatter of pans in a busy service, a noise I could tune out. Doubt crept in, uninvited, insidious, curling around my thoughts like smoke. What if I let them out? She'd cry, promise it'd never happen again, her tears glistening like they always did when she played me. Crocodile tears, my mother used to call them. She'd touch my arm, use that voice, soft, sweet, manipulative, honed over years of bending me to her will. I'd seen it before, fallen for it too many times, each act a dish I'd choke down. Would I bend again, let her season my resolve with guilt? Or would I stand firm, let her rot with him in that sterile tomb, a monument to my breaking point? And if they died, what then? The police would come eventually, knocking on my pristine door, asking questions I'd have to answer. I'd have to hide the bodies, drag them to the garage, maybe wrap them in plastic, scrub the fridge until it's shown again. I need a story. Claire left me. Ran off with him, a lie as smooth as my sauces. I was good at details. Mise en place was my life. But could I cover this, erase every trace in a house this clean? My mind spun, weighing it all. Murder, mercy, consequences, the weight of each choice pressing down like a press-on dough. The screams weakened, her voice a whisper now, a ghost of sound, is silent, lost to the cold's embrace. That's when I turned inward. The past tense of my life shifted. They're in there now, locked, trembling, fading. I sit here, wine in hand, the lock untouched. Their breaths slow, shallow gasps I can almost hear through the steel, fogging briefly before thinning out. Their skin pales, turns to ice under the hum, fingers curling inward as the cold claims them. I see it happening, right this moment, unfolding like a dish I can't unmake, a reduction I can't stop. I could open the door. I could end it, save them with a twist of my wrist, or damn them with my stillness. But I don't move. I look at you instead. You listening, watching me through these words, judging me across this divide. Tell me, what should I do?